Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Prigge from the coolest coast, and we're coming to you live today with another episode of Coffee on the Coast. And I've got a wonderful guy in Jeff Leismer here, who is a local entrepreneur and visionary. Good afternoon, Jeff.
Hey, how are you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great now that you're here. This is going to be a great time. I am just fascinated by what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to start out talking a little bit about who you are and what Vibetech is, and that's what we're talking about today, folks. A company called Vibetech that Jeff started. So I'm just going to let you kind of give the background here, Jeff, to our listeners, the people that are watching.
Well, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. This is definitely the coolest coast. I'm happy to be here in Sheboygan. It's a beautiful place to be. So, yeah, I'm actually a biomedical engineer. I've got a PhD in mechanical and aerospace engineering. It was actually my journey through school when I was at Michigan Tech before warming up at the University of Florida for the PhD, that I came up with the technology that would eventually become Vibetech. And it's something that I was passionate about is kind of understanding our mechanical interactions with our surroundings and the role that has on shaping our bodies. I had an advisor at Michigan Tech who was studying astronauts during his postdoc, and he relayed all of the different problems the astronauts have up in space as a result of a lack of gravity acting on the body. So there's a lot more taking place there that I think that the average person doesn't know about. When you're, not subjected to, gravity, your muscles aren't working the way they normally would work. Your bones don't get stimulated the way they get stimulated normally. Even your veins are a muscle. And I think people don't quite remember that from way back when they may have learned about it early on in their schooling. But your veins decondition in space. So astronauts will pass out if they try and stand up for too long when they come back to Earth. And actually, that was my first space-related project as a biomedical engineer, was coming up with a machine that would fight cardiovascular deconditioning in space. So I had to come up with a way to exercise the veins. So that'll be another podcast. So let's focus on Vibetech here. So this was, I ended up doing that project successfully. And there was another team that was focused on bone loss in astronauts, that they tried to make a device. It didn't work the way that basically the machine didn't work. It broke. And so then said, well, you know what? I could come up with a device that would fight bone loss, but I wasn't, the way that they'd gone about this, I thought I could do a better approach. So I kind of wanted to kind of take a step back and look at the fundamentals behind bone loss and what causes that. What was NASA doing at the time to prevent bone loss in astronauts? An astronaut will lose bone mass 10 to 20 times quicker than an older adult. I mean, it's just crazy how fast that bone loss can happen. Now, they will be able to get it back if they work really hard, but it might take 4 or 5 years to get back to that bone mass. But one of the things that my advisor, Dr. William Cook, had conveyed, as an exercise physiologist, is that if you come up with a good solution for astronauts in space, you've got older adults here on Earth that can really benefit as well. So as I kind of leapt forward into this, my master's project of trying to solve bone loss for astronauts, I had in the back of my mind that this is something that could help older adults, people with disabilities. And, I grew up hanging out with, like people in group homes that my parents both worked in a group home together. That's where they met. And so I got to learn a lot of the issues from a lack of physical activity that happen even in a younger population. But realizing that we have a lot of people on Earth that can benefit from additional physical activity, I wanted to try and copy some of those mechanical signals that are present all day, every day in healthy, active people and apply that to astronauts, while hopefully having a design that could be useful to people here on Earth as well. So I studied what NASA did. NASA was working with bisphosphonates. Those are drugs like Boniva, Fosamax. Those are the commercial names for them. And what they do is they tell your body to stop resorbing old damaged bone so that only new bone is laid out. Well, right away I realized that's a problem. If you don't get rid of these little micro cracks, you might have one micro crack that's near another one, and once they start to grow, they connect and form a bigger crack. And then there are all sorts of these little cracks that keep growing all over until they form a catastrophic fracture. And I recognized that early on, that you wouldn't want to be on these drugs for too long of a period of time, or else your risk of fracture would be increased. So this was 22 years ago that I was doing this research. And sure enough, about 5 years later, the first studies came out saying that you're more prone to fracture if you've been on these drugs for 5 years than if you weren't. And people were suffering hip fractures that were on those drugs for too long. So I'm glad I recognized that, because without pharma doing something incorrectly, Vibetech wouldn't have existed. So thank you, Big Pharma. So I realized mechanical stimulation was really going to be the way to go. Let's copy what nature does. Let's really take a look at that signal. The most common things that we do all day, every day that put loading onto our bones, standing and walking. So I wanted to recreate some of those forces that our body feels. And I ended up finding that there's mechanical vibration from the impact with each step that we take. And if you're watching somebody walking across a force plate, you can actually see some of those vibrations taking place. And what dawned on me at the time was that that's the same frequency range that our muscles contract at. Like, I bet that's important for an astronaut who doesn't get the steps in, so the external source of that vibration isn't happening. And then internally, the muscles aren't being worked in the legs because you're pulling yourself through the International Space Station with your arms. So you're not getting that internal muscle force generating that vibration. So I built a tool. That tool put vibration in through the weight-bearing structures of the body, and I applied force to help direct the vibration. And it was really neat, because after 10 minutes of using this, I completely worked my legs to the point of exhaustion. I couldn't even stand up. And all I was doing was sitting there doing nothing. And it was just force and vibration applied to my leg. And I said, okay, I just created exercise without effort. What can I do to make this available to everybody across the globe who's less active now than they used to be, whether it's due to age, disability, injury, surgery, illness, laziness, being stuck behind a desk. I think you're not at a standing desk, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm sitting down.
Me too. So we're both atrophying right now. So we're not getting that stimulus right at the moment. You do need breaks, but it dawned on me that I need to get a company going. I need to get a patent. This is something that's too big. The only other way to contract or get the muscles to contract without effort is electrical stimulation. And that comes with its own set of challenges. Mechanically stimulating the body, I've found over the last 20 years, I pursued a PhD to get credibility, to get federal finances to get Vibetech off the ground. I'd worked with business school students at the University of Florida to put a first business plan together. I came up to Wisconsin because I'd already had kids while working on the PhD, and realized I should probably get a job and make some money. So Kohler Company brought me up this way, which was great. But the economic downturn back in 2008 gave me some extra free time to be able to finally pursue the grant. And so wrote a grant to the National Institute on Aging, and it was a small business innovation research grant. And we got our first good source of funding then to be able to get things rolling. So now for the last dozen or so years, we've been developing the science and the technology to make this safe, effective, accessible, and affordable. And so now, we're on our third generation of robotic rehabilitation equipment that we're really concentrating the focus of what we're doing on, again, older adults, people recovering from injury and surgery. Those are kind of two of the major pathways. And so we're targeting those facilities that provide care for these individuals. And there are reimbursement codes available in order to be able to get these folks to be able to adopt the technology and actually get a really quick return on their investment. Of course, there are a couple of individuals that have bought the equipment for themselves or a loved one already. But what's exciting for us is that we really are just kind of getting the ball rolling now and making this happen.
Very cool. So I'm sure people are just itching to know what it looks like. And I'm going to show them a picture now. You said this is the third generation or the third iteration of the product, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So
what's going on in the picture here?
Well, so that in the picture, so the picture is taken at Rocky Knoll. Rocky Knoll Healthcare Center in Plymouth, Wisconsin has been a great innovation partner of ours. We actually, with the design of this equipment, we were able to get Rocky Knoll to win the 2020 McKnight's Long-Term Care News Innovation Award. And it was the Gold Award for Innovator of the Year. So that was the most prestigious award that the largest publicist in the long-term care field offers. And so this product, you do leg presses on it. And picture there is Deb Jacoby. She's our Director of Clinical Implementation and Training. Prior to joining Vibetech, she worked at Rocky Knoll as the Director of Life Enrichment, where it was a department that she worked in for 35 plus years. So she was a great conduit to getting us to really design around the needs of people that didn't have the physical mobility that they would need to be able to stand and walk, which are really those two things that put the mechanical inputs into the body that keep us strong. If you're in a nursing home for roughly 6 months, most people lose the ability to walk. There's just not a whole lot of time and staffing to be able to really support that, and there really aren't the tools in the facility to do so. So we designed around the needs of kind of the population in the nursing home that has the most falls out of everybody, and that was the memory care residents. So that was really, really exciting to be able to see firsthand what our first generation robotic equipment was doing for those residents. And that was when Rocky Knoll bought that back in 2016. That was when we started doing work with the memory care population. And wow, we actually got the first gentleman to use the equipment was in hospice. He used a wheelchair full time, couldn't stand and walk, wasn't participating in any activities whatsoever until they convinced him to try the equipment. His very first use of it, his neuropathy symptoms had faded away to the point that now he could feel his foot. He had one leg amputated, the other below the knee, and the other leg, he had neuropathy. 10 minutes of this mechanical vibration with a little bit of force to help transmit it from his foot up through his body, with the vibrations at the same frequency that the muscles contract at, kind of got those nerves firing in a way that he could again feel his foot. So he's like, oh, I definitely want to come back. So we did 2 more 10-minute treatments that week, and he felt strong enough to be able to ask if he could walk with his walker. So they let him walk with the walker, walking with assist, following him, holding on to him. After about a month and a half, they gave him the all clear to walk independently. They took him off hospice, and they gave him the passcode to leave the locked memory care unit so he could wander the whole facility. So every day he'd come down and visit Deb in her office and say, Deb, is it my turn to Vibetech yet? Well, not yet, but come back tomorrow and we'll get you situated.
Wow.
So
Wow, that's really fascinating to me because I know what neuropathy is, and for those out there that don't know, that's the loss of feeling in your extremities, and brought on a lot by different ailments, but diabetes. So I'm a type 2 diabetic, and I do have neuropathy in my left foot. So I'm very interested in what you've got going here. Can you kind of explain how it works now? The platform that we see here, I'm going to pull up another picture.
sure.
That's vibrating at a certain frequency. Is that what's happening?
Yep, absolutely. So our first generation product we made as a leg press machine. We ended up, uh, we found that getting a nice range of motion with the resistance applied by the foot plate and then the vibration coming through the foot plate really simulated gravity well. And even if you look at it, the vibrations and the force, the resistance that it's generating actually pushes through your center of gravity. So the direction of motion of the foot plate really is designed in a way that actually simulates the forces that you'd feel acting on your body if you were standing and walking. So that's really, right at the heart of what we wanted to do is simulate standing and walking mechanical forces. And so now that we're on our third generation equipment, we've actually incorporated strength assessments, and the ability to automatically adjust the dosing for each individual without having to have a therapist or technician be able to, figure out what's appropriate for each individual. It's self-dictated. So if a person can't follow instructions or if they've had an injury or surgery, it's just going to be their leg weight resting on the foot plate. Their bodies aren't then going to be used to being able to generate lots of force. So since they're not voluntarily pushing with a lot of force with their muscles, we keep the vibrations small. And the small vibrations contract the muscles involuntarily, but only faintly. As that person begins to gain strength, they can start to push harder and harder. And over time, as they push harder and harder, we automatically scale that vibration dosing so the involuntary muscle contraction contracts their muscles more forcibly. And
Wow.
it's hard to explain. You really have to get on the device to feel it. And we're able to mimic a lot of different things. We even incorporate some equations of gravity, with momentum and other factors into the way the robotics push back on the body. That gives it such a unique feel, but it feels great. It feels soothing, and it's just when everybody that hops on there just says, "Wow, how amazing it feels," they're going to stick with it, and that's wonderful. And we made it very accessible. So our prior two robotic devices had a chair attached right to the machine, and it had a swivel seat so you could do a wheelchair transfer into it. But what we realized is that in most care environments, it's very challenging to be able to help make a or to really get somebody into the device. So we said, let's make a wheelchair accessible device. So you don't have to do a wheelchair transfer. You can actually do a treatment in any room that you want, wherever it's most convenient. I mean, you could be sitting in a recliner, and still be able to do the treatment. We could just wheel the device right up to you to be able to get you access to it. So and it's actually fun. We have a passive mode that moves you through a range of motion. If you keep your legs locked on it and it's pushing you through the range of motion in a wheelchair, it's actually, it makes it so it's an automatic rocking chair and with vibrations that feel really good and are very therapeutic for you. So it's neat. We're doing some other things too on, to make it more engaging for folks. Again, looking at the needs of memory care residents, somebody with dementia that isn't able to stand and walk and also has cognitive impairments, that's actually due to structural deterioration of the brain, so that the firing signals aren't happening the way that they need to in order to get that person to move or to be able to relate with people, and carry on those conversations. So there are some things that we're doing in the virtual reality space, coupled with artificial intelligence, to be able to capture what somebody's interactions are with the device in real time, so we can know if they're actually following instructions or not. We can manipulate their bodies in a way that should coach them to be able to have their neurons fire in a manner that they might actually regain the ability to follow certain instructions. So it's really, really intriguing. And actually, we just started some collaboration with professors out of the UK that are looking at doing some brain imaging in association with some of this work. So it's really, really exciting and really cool. Plus, we have students that have been developing video games for us to connect with our device, in particular for people with memory care issues, so that they can have an immersive, calming environment that they are pushing on this foot plate, and it's controlling what happens within this virtual space. And so, I never thought I was going to have a video game company, but here I am.
Here you are.
Great.
Yeah, it's the gamification, right, of everything. Well, I think it's really interesting because you were talking about bone density, you're talking about muscles, you're talking about balance, you're talking about arteries, and this device really helps at all of those things, doesn't it?
All of that. And we've done over 24 studies to date, and the clinical results are just tremendous. And what I love now is that now that we've got our third generation product, we've got a handful of prototypes, and we're doing demonstrations to customers. And what they're saying is that the results that we're conveying are tracking 100% to the residents of the nursing homes, and of the patients that they're treating in their neurological rehab clinics. It's just amazing. And all it takes is to copy nature. And that's the greatest insight is, look to nature. Nature has solved problems for a very long time. If you can pull out what nature did and then figure out, well, how can we bend that to the current situation? That's really kind of the approach that I took, and wow, it works well.
That's awesome. So I just want to pull this up here really quick. We can see it on your nameplate, but this is the website, vibetechglobal.com. Go on there. There's just a wealth of information. There's videos, and you can really find out how this thing works and kind of what it does for people. What's the future? Now you're talking about all these different things. What's the next step for you? Are you still in the investment phase? Where would this thing be? Is it mostly rehab clinics or, those type of things? Where do you see the end product being used? Is this a device that I have at my house, for instance?
Well, long-term goal is have this everywhere. Have this wherever people are deficient in weight-bearing physical activity. Ultimately, I'd love to turn the living room into the most active place in the household. Just being able to, sit there watching TV while you're getting your workout in. But right now with the Vibetech 3, our third generation robotic equipment, we're really pushing into the rehab and senior living organizations because they can generate revenue right from day one. Now, at the cost that we're talking about, $25,000 a product, it's not inexpensive, but if a facility is doing 10 treatments a day, it's not going to take more than a couple of months to generate the revenue from Medicare and insurance to be able to actually pay off that device. It might take only 3-4 months to do so. If you look at it like you're an employer that wants their employees to be healthy and to not have as many workers' comp related issues, give them a 15-minute break to let them use the equipment. If you get 15 people a day on the device, on one device, you're talking, it's probably only going to cost, if you finance the equipment over 3 years, it's going to cost less than $3 per session to be able to administer that treatment to somebody. That's next to nothing. So what we're really trying to do is to make this affordable, accessible to everybody, doing it safely, doing it intuitively. The robotics, it's important to make sure that you have everything done properly, safely, when you're incorporating robotics. Also with the vibrations, there can be bad vibrations, and people have to be careful about some of the devices on the market. One of the UK researchers I was talking to said that his mom suffered harm into her tendons, and it was all resulting from her using a vibrating platform that was very intense vibration. It's really important to follow the International Standards Organization limits on vibration exposure, which Vibetech does that. I'm actually on the ISO technical committee that writes and reviews these standards, and I'm working on development of the first international standards surrounding the field of therapeutic vibration to actually have this adopted as a legitimate medical modality. I mean, we are already FDA listed. We already have Medicare and insurance reimbursement codes that are reimbursing. There have been over 25,000 treatments performed on some of the oldest, frailest individuals, just right here in Wisconsin already. So we're looking to make Sheboygan our home base to be able to really grow and expand from here and really get products out the door that will be able to affect everybody in a very, very positive way.
Very cool. Awesome. So if anybody wants to find out more about this technology, go to vibetechglobal.com. Check it out. Get in touch with Jeff if you're interested in investing or you have any ideas for him. I'm sure he's got a lot of people involved. It's not, when you start a company, it's just not one person, as we all know. And this is really interesting stuff. It's a far cry from the old Betty Boop belt that I used to see in cartoons. This is high-tech stuff, and it's so interesting.
Well, so, I really appreciate this. So thank you for letting me talk a little bit more about what we've got going on. And yeah, keep your eye on the website and LinkedIn and all of the social media platforms. We're going to be doing some more exciting things here. And this is the year for us to get the real first commercial product out the door. So expansion is going to be incredible. The amount of research and even making it so this gamification, I'm making this so it's an open source platform where other developers can create things for us or on our system to help patients in every way. We can even get some elementary school kids designing games on our equipment. I mean, this is going to be fun. I want it to be engaging, and I want everybody to have a sense of ownership of what's going on here. So,
super. Well, thanks a lot, Jeff, for joining me. And good luck in the future, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. We'll have to bring you on in the next 6 months or so and see how it's going.
Well, that sounds great, Jason. Thank you so much for your time.